As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call this regular town council meeting to order. I ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the many blessings of this day. And we ask, Lord, now that you be with us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in your great name we pray. Amen. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Up next, your consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Up next under introduction and special presentation, this week is National Police Week, and at this time I'd like to present a National Police Week proclamation. Oh yeah. Town of Clayton proclaiming the week of May 15th through May 21st, 2022 as National Police Week. Whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Clayton Police Department. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, more than 23,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and have been killed in the line of duty, including Patrol Officer Charles Lee, Patrol Officer Ray Gilmore, and Lieutenant Monica Carey, who honorably served as members of the Clayton Police Department. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 619 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 472 officers killed in 2021 and 147 officers killed in previous years. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 34th Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2022. And whereas the annual Candlelight Vigil is a part of National Police Week, which will be observed this year, May 15th through the 21st, 2022. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and the U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now therefore, on behalf of the Clayton Town Council, I, Jody McLeod, Mayor of the Town of Clayton, observe May 15th through 21st, 2022 as National Police Week and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation, duly proclaimed this 16th day of May, 2022. I just want to express on behalf of the Town of Clayton our most sincere gratitude to you and to your families for what you do for Clayton on the daily. The largest investment of public tax dollars in the Town of Clayton goes to public safety, and it is money that is well spent in the Town of Clayton. Thank you. And yeah, if we could convene down front and get a picture, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, just go back as far as you can get.
How you doing? John? Yeah, I do. Seriously, we got you. Yeah. Really? Oh, turn your belt on up, Pat.
You don't know how this works, short people in the front, different people in the
Can y'all fold in this way? That's what, yeah. Yep, you're good. All right, that's everybody. All right, right here. Couple more. Perfect.
Are you serious? Well, I miss y'all too. Well, we can change that. I'll special call you. Oh, okay, all right.
You know, I don't recognize these detectives in a shirt and tie.
No,
I'm like, y'all are incognito.
look, that's what we always used to say. You'd see somebody out of uniform like a trailer, but I don't recognize what clothes on. And then they're like, their wife's done up under like,
Like
that ain't wait a
strictly.
minute, that ain't wait a minute. We're talking about regular clothes.
All right, thank you, everybody. Up next this evening is old business, and that will be a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a utility construction agreement with the NCDOT for the Ranch Road Expansion Project. That's TIP-U-223. I'm sorry, 6223.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council, Joshua Baird, Engineering Director. Tonight before you is the agreement for the utility construction agreement for U6223. Several months back, I brought an agreement before you for the actual design of those improvements. So with the extension of the road project, there are some existing utilities that have to be relocated, as well as some betterments that we were interested in order to install new infrastructure to be able to serve the more southeastern side area of Clayton. And so this agreement accounts for those relocation costs per General Statutes 136-27-1. Based on the town of Clayton size, we're responsible for 25% of those relocated utilities, and then we are responsible for 100% of the betterments, including the larger line size to be able to serve that area. So this is setting up for future in that area and being able to supply water to that area. So before you tonight is the agreement that we would pay NCDOT for the relocation as well as the betterments. The total is $452,181.95. This is included in our CIP for next year as we're working through budget. So staff requests authorization for town manager or designee to sign the agreement moving forward with DOT. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments for staff? All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a utility construction agreement with the NCDOT for the Ranch Road Extension Project. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, up next under old business is Country Lane Conditional Rezoning District. This item has been continued till tonight. The council has held the public hearing. The public hearing is complete, and now the council will have opportunity for some additional question answers with those they need they need answers from. So turn it over to Jonathan.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Jonathan Jacobs, Assistant Town Engineer. As you can see, I am not Ben Howell, Planning Director. He was unexpectedly absent today, so engineering is helping aid by presenting this project tonight. So bear with me as I have been schooled on a lot of this afternoon. All right, so tonight I'm here to present to you some updated information related to 2021-20-CZM Conditional Zoning District and Master Plan for the Country Lane Road, or Country Lane rezoning project. So the applicant requests rezoning the properties from PD-R zoning district to conditional zoning residential district. And will allow up to 270 single-family units. As you will note, this is down from 299 on the previous information, which brings the gross density to 2.347 units per acre, which is also down from 2.6. The total property size is 114.81 acres, and the location is located off Country Lane, northeast of its intersection with Jasper Drive and Clayton. So on the screen, you will see your revised overall site plan. Some noted differences here are some different shading. So to identify some of that, you'll see what kind of looks like a brick background, which are a newer, larger lot, which is a minimum width of 53 feet. And then the yellow areas are the 45-foot lots that you saw in the previous presentation material. They have also identified the steep slope areas on this map from the last site plan that you saw. Some revised development data. The proposed use is still residential. As mentioned a minute ago, the proposed gross density is 2.347 units per acre with a maximum of 270 units. Access to this site is from a full access driveway on Country Lane and providing connections to existing stubs on Hunter Lane and Lynn Way. Water and sewer service will be provided by the town of Clayton, and the electric provider will be Duke Energy. Some adjacent zoning and land uses are R10 and residential estate, which is also known as RE. To the north and to the south, east and west is residential estate, existing single family. All right, before you have some updated development standards. So they are proposing 3 phases. Phase 1 to be proposed and subphased into 1A and B. In the green table, you will note the applicant is now identifying that the minimum lot size will be 6,000. That is different from the previous information, which showed an average minimum to be 6,000, and then an 8,000 minimum adjacent to parcel boundaries. And that's measured from the front setback line. Minimum lot width overall 45 feet with a maximum lot coverage of 50% and maximum impervious of 60%. The other information that's new on this slide is a diagram of the lot layout, an example lot layout on the bottom left of the screen, showing the differentiation between the lot widths. Transportation improvements remain the same with a right turn lane on Barber Mill Road at Amelia Church, a left turn lane on Amelia Church at Barber Mill Road, and a right and left turn lane on Barber Mill Road at Country Lane. Project will comply with the Town of Clayton Stormwater Ordinance. Public water and sewer is available, or I'm sorry, public water is available on Country Lane, and public sewer will be extended through the site, and the parcel will construct a new pump station in order to serve that sewer system. And electric service is available from Duke Energy. Continuing on, open space and amenities, they're providing approximately 45 acres of open space with protected wetlands, streams, and riparian buffers and floodplains. Neighborhood amenities include fitness and recreation center, and additional amenities are listed in the conditions with some options, and Greenway and public utility easement will be dedicated along the eastern boundary. Landscape buffers are providing a 15-foot type C landscaping buffer with opaque screening provided, and street trees will be provided to meet the UDC requirements. Architectural standards, this is the section that's different here. Some example elevations have been provided on the next sheet of the presentation, but since the agenda packet went out, some additional updated elevations have been provided to council, I believe, so I would refer to those to be the most current, and the development will follow the 2006 design guidelines. So here are the original, or I shouldn't say the original, the provided architectural elevations that have since been updated with the information that has been provided to council from the applicant. So the conditional zoning district is subject to some criteria in the UDC. Consistency with adopted plans and policies of the town. The 2040 growth plan calls this area to be low density residential up to 3 units per acre. The 2045 growth plan calls for the area to be medium density residential, which includes 3 to 5 units per acre, and the development is consistent with both the 2040 and the 2045 growth plan. And I'll note that the reason that both growth plans are mentioned is the site was submitted when the 2040 growth plan was still adopted, and the 2045 was adopted while we were reviewing the project. Suitability of subject property, the current zoning is PD-R, which is no longer a applicable zoning district for the town of Clayton, previously approved as a planned development. And proposed conditional district permits only residential uses, and the applicant is proposing to connect to public water and extend public sewer to serve the development. And improves balance of uses and meets specific demand in the town. The surrounding area is residential, and the proposed development will provide suburban-style residential development. Capacity of adequate public facilities and services. The parcel is adjacent to schools. The development proposed to be served by West Clayton Elementary, Clayton Middle School, and Clayton High School. Only Clayton High School is on the 2021 to 2022 CAP school list for Johnson County. For roadways, the development will be accessed by Country Lane, Hunter Lane, and Linway, with Hunter Lane and Linway being existing subdivision streets. And additional public roads internal to the development, which are listed in purple on your site plan. Wastewater treatment, the development proposed will be served by public sewer and a new pump station constructed to serve the development. And the development is subject to the town's wastewater allocation policy, which Joshua will talk through in a little bit. Water supply, public water is available on a Country Lane and for my county water line, which will be served by master meter. And stormwater drainage, the development will follow town stormwater ordinance. Legal purposes of zoning that are not contravened, all town ordinances, procedures, and approvals will be followed. So one of the other condition criteria is no adverse effect on adjacent property owners. The development will have a 15-foot landscape buffer with opaque screening. The development will preserve existing wetlands, streams, and floodplains, and the condition requiring that lots adjacent to existing development will be a minimum of 8,000 square feet in size. No one property owner or small group will benefit to the detriment of the general public. With imposed conditions, no detriment is considered for the general public. Here you'll find a list of the master plan approval criteria. This is all information that you've seen before, so I will not read every bullet, and it's included in your agenda packet. All right, and then I'll let Joshua speak to wastewater.
Thank you, Jonathan. In terms of wastewater, the project is a total of 270 single-family residential units, as described earlier, at 250 gallons per day. Community center with 2,000 gallons per day, so a total request of 69,500 gallons per day. The project does meet the current policy in terms of scoring. It does meet the minimum 50. As referenced earlier, there is a new pump station associated with it, so they are receiving the deduct for 20 points, but able to obtain other points through some overflow parking, some additional parking through the site to be able to get to that 50-point minimum required by the policy. Keeping in mind, this is a separate action other than the planning action. There's a separate wastewater action, but feel it's important to provide the information share as part of the overall presentation as you consider the project as a whole. So looking at this graph here, I'm going to walk you through it and explain a little bit. This is showing our existing capacity as we currently stand and other obligatory flow that we have provided and commitments to other development that has been previously granted at the town council level but may not have been constructed yet or realized at the treatment facilities. So if we'll start with green, you'll see that is the tributary flow. That is the total flow that is observed at our 3 treatment sources. That's our Little Creek Waste Reclamation Facility, our commitment with Raleigh, as well as Johnston County. So, excuse me, that green is the sum of those 3. Looking at the red, pinkish, that is existing industrial capacity as well as some additional reserved industrial capacity there. And then in the purple, you see commitments. Previously, over the past 2 years, most of the allocations that have came before council have been on a phased approach where development are receiving wastewater as of a certain date, and the goal is there to extend that timeline out. Many of the developments that are coming before us have a extended build-out time as is, so being able to take advantage of that and try to continue to allow development to move forward while we work towards the new plant, the new Sam's Branch Waste Reclamation Facility. So you see between our 3 total contracts, we have a total of 5.65 million gallons per day. That's 2.5 at Little Creek, 1.4 with the county, and 1.75 with Raleigh. And you see those added up to the total, the solid black line there at 5.65 million gallons per day. You see 2 dashed lines. I want to explain to those. One is 80% and the other one is 90% of that permitted capacity. State requirements in the O2T rules have requirements that anytime a utility gets to 80 and 90%, there are certain things that have to be in place for the municipality or the utility to continue to provide and grant allocations as well as permits, sewer extension permits. So that's kind of a rough rundown of the graph here. Obviously, on the bottom is the scale out over time. So looking out kind of where you see the ramp up, stop, and kind of the build out between there and our overall commitment or total utility capacity is about 250,000 gallons that is remaining before we hit that threshold. Obviously, keeping that in mind, some of the 80 and 90% rules do apply to when an ATC, an authorization to construct, is received for that new facility, at what points we hit the 80 and 90. We do have that ATC for the facility, so keeping that in mind as well as you're looking at those 80 and 90% rules. The other thing to consider, again, we don't necessarily want to go right to the last gallon of water. We also want to keep some contingency and freeboard as we're working through this. And there's several of assumptions in this. This is a model. We're tracking wastewater. One thing to keep in mind of the reserve capacities, we do reserve capacity, as I mentioned earlier, for a single family at 250 gallons per day. There may be some flexibility in that. We have to be conservative in what we do. So over time, this is somewhat of a moving target. It does shift as this flow transitions from on paper at 250 to what we're actually seeing at the plant, but we have to be most conservative. So over time, this will fluctuate just a little bit. Also, as we have improvements to our system that reduce infiltration, I&I, that also reduces the total that we see at the treatment plants with rain events, so it helps our overall capacity as well. So just some assumptions and clarifications to keep in mind as we're looking at the graph there. So moving forward, a specific request by this development, no different than the others, on a phased approach, looking at different time frames to which the wastewater would actually become available to the project. One of the key drivers here is the Little Creek infrastructure project. So that is the Little Creek pump station and the linear infrastructure that is currently under contract and under construction right now. Little Creek itself is nearing the capacity, and we've got to be able to get that infrastructure in, where we've got some additional capacity in the Raleigh treatment source, so get that infrastructure that will carry and convey the wastewater that received at Little Creek over to the Raleigh treatment. So looking at this here schedule, it's broken up into the first phase, 1A and 1B. They had a mini center broken up into 1A, phases 2 and 3 for the total of 270 units and total of gallons per day of 69,500. I will say this is not the applicant's preference. We've had many discussions with the applicants, and they would prefer a more aggressive schedule. But one of the key things is really that Little Creek infrastructure being online. So we look at a graph a different way. I'll overlay that graph with just the remaining capacity as we venture out over time. You can kind of see just that 200, just over that 200,000 as we get out towards during the year 2025, there in the calendar year. Again, this is the request. This is something that is up for consideration. Moving forward, you would have the option to approve as is, modify this schedule, or deny as that separate wastewater allocation, but wanted to provide the information. So again, total project request, $69,500. And again, you're looking at about just over 200,000 of really total. Again, we don't want to go right up to that gallon, but keeping that in mind as we work. That new plant, we are working towards that. At this time right now, I don't have a date to which those 6 MGD are going to be available. As we continue to work through that, keep that in mind in terms of timing of this wastewater schedule as well. So with that, I can turn it back over to Jonathan who will complete the presentation, and then I think we can take some questions on any of the presentation if that works for the, okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. We'll get there.
All right, some considerations for Town Council. So Town Council shall consider recommendation of the Planning Board and the Planning Director. Town Council shall adopt a written statement of reasonableness and consistency. I want to note that the previous presentation was presented to the Planning Board, but the Planning Board has not been presented the updated information that you're receiving tonight. Town Council shall approve with conditions, or deny the conditional zoning district. The applicant must agree to any changes in conditions prior to the council's decision tonight. And conditional zoning district, master plan, and narrative will be recorded with Johnson County if approved. And with that, that means they run with the land and they do not expire. All right, staff and planning board recommendations. Staff's recommendation with updated condition. Staff recommends approval of 2021-20-CZM Country Lane Conditional Zoning District and Master Plan, subject to the 32 recommended conditions of approval. The planning board unanimously recommended approval of the conditional zoning district based on the proposed application meeting the criteria for approval, with the inclusion of the recommended condition of approval agreed to by the applicant. Again, I want to reiterate that was the previous presentation. There have been some updated and additional conditions added tonight to present to you. And then the planning board's consistency statement was the 2040 growth plan indicates the proposed development area as low density residential at a gross density of up to 3 dwelling units per acre. The 2045 growth plan, which was adopted after the conditional zoning district was submitted, calls for the area to be medium density residential at a gross density of 3 to 5 units per acre. The proposed conditional zoning district is consistent with both the 2040 and the 2045 growth plan. All right, so this is going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to go through them because most of them are different, but I'm going to go through the recommended conditions of approval. There are 32. Number 1, following town council approval, an electronic copy of the master plan and narrative, including the conditions of approval, shall be submitted to the planning department for final approval. Number 2, the development shall meet all adopted Town of Clayton Unified Development Code, or known as UDC, requirements, Town of Clayton Engineering and Stormwater Design Standards, and the North Carolina Fire Code, and NFPA fire standards, except where specifically modified by the approved master plan. The development shall be constructed in substantial conformance with the master plan and master plan narrative as approved by the Clayton Town Council. The permitted use, number 4, permitted uses in the development shall be limited to the following: single-family house, park, fitness and recreation center, and utility known as a utility minor. Number 5, the following standards will apply to the development. Maximum number of single-family houses is 270. The maximum proposed density is 2.347 dwelling units per acre. I shouldn't say the maximum proposed. The maximum of the condition will be 2.347 dwelling units per acre. A minimum lot size of interior lots, which were those yellow shaded, would be 6,000 square feet, and minimum lot size adjacent to the project boundary being 8,000 square feet. Number 6, a minimum of 90 residential lots shall have a minimum lot width of 53 feet as measured at the front setback line. All other residential lots shall have a minimum lot width of 45 feet as measured also at the front setback line. Number 7, other dimensional standards and setbacks shall meet the requirements in the approved master plan narrative. Number 8, a minimum of 45 acres of the site will be comprised of open space, and at least 50% of the required recreation and open space will be part of a contiguous parcel. Number 9, and enhanced erosion control measures shall be provided along the limits of disturbance immediately along the Little Creek and its tributaries where areas identified as steep slopes are to be graded. Number 10, a 1-acre site will be designated for a fitness and recreation center for the development with at least one of the following additional amenities to be included: pool, splash pad, playground, or clubhouse. Number 11, at least 2 of the following amenities will be included in the development: a great lawn, picnic shelter, pavilion, fire pit, or dog park. Number 12, a two-lane median divided residential collector street will provide access from the northern phases to the southern phase of the development, acting as 2 means of access in the event of emergencies while also minimizing environmental impacts. Number 13, the following transportation improvements will be approved and bonded by Ncdot prior to the approval of the final plat: Barber Mill Road at Amelia Church Road. Construct an exclusive southbound right turn lane on Barber Mill Road with 100 feet of full width storage with appropriate deceleration and taper. Construction of an exclusive eastbound left turn lane on Amelia Church Road with at least 200 feet of full width storage with appropriate deceleration and taper. And then on Barber Mill at Country Lane Road, construct an exclusive northbound right turn lane on Barber Mill Road with 100 feet of full width storage with approximate deceleration and taper, and construct an exclusive southbound left turn lane on Barber Mill Road with 100 feet of full width storage with appropriate deceleration and taper. Number 14, no more than 30 certificates of occupancy will be issued within the development before the second required access point is constructed. Number 15, the development will be responsible for the installation of a public sanitary sewer system that will serve up to 270 residential units in Country Lane, including the installation of a pump station and approximately 8,000 linear feet of force main sewer. Easements will be provided for public utilities that are installed outside of the public right-of-way per Town of Clayton requirements. Number 16, the development shall dedicate a greenway and public utility easement along the entire eastern property boundary for future construction of a greenway and sewer utilities. The final location of the easement shall be based on coordination with town staff. The greenway and public utility easement shall be at least 20 feet wide, and a minimum 20 feet wide access to the easement shall be provided from the pump station area. Number 17, the development shall provide a payment in lieu for construction of a future 10-foot wide asphalt greenway in the dedicated easement, or shall construct a 10-foot wide asphalt greenway in the dedicated easement. If the development constructs the greenway, an additional 20-foot wide public utility easement shall be provided adjacent to the greenway easement for future installation of sewer utilities. Payment in lieu shall be calculated at 125% of the estimated construction costs based on a sealed engineer's estimate and shall be provided prior to approval of the final plat for Phase 3. Number 18, the development shall construct at least 2 connections to the greenway easement. 1 connection shall be in Phase 2 and 1 connection shall be in Phase 3. These connections shall be a minimum of 5 feet wide and may be constructed of asphalt or concrete. Number 19, a minimum of 6 different home plans, each with a minimum of 3 different elevations and 6 different color palettes will be provided to add variety to the neighborhood. No home can be constructed with an exterior elevation, also known as a front facade, or color palette that is identical to the home on either side or directly across the street from it. Number 20, a minimum of 15% of the homes, which is at least 41, shall include masonry on 1 or more of the facades. Number 21, all homes shall have at least 2 of the following architectural elements: decorative window trim, shutters, board and batten, shakes, decorative gable vents, decorative gable window or gable trim detail, hip roof lines, a bay window, water table over the garage door, decorative horizontal trim boards, dormers, brick or stone accent, or front porch columns. Number 22, elevations provided are representative of the product that may be built while meeting the architectural design commitments. Elevations may change due to revisions in base models, finishes preferred by home buyers, home plans more suitable for individual lot layout and driveway placement, or other factors. Alternative elevations proposed will be reviewed and approved by the planning director for consistency with the architectural design commitments at the time of building permit review. Number 23. All homes will have a minimum of 2-car garages. Number 24, energy efficient features will include a minimum of 3 of the following: 14-SEER energy efficient HVAC system, air barrier and ceiling, carbon monoxide detectors, decorative fiberglass front door, gas heat with second floor electric heat pump if a separate system, LED lighting throughout the home, low VOC carpet, low VOC paint, low E insulated single hung vinyl windows with tilt out feature, MERVH 8-vac filters, programmable thermostat, R38 attic insulation, separate HVAC system or zone for each floor per plan, smoke alarms in each bedroom, water-saving faucets and shower heads. Number 25, a 15-foot wide Type C landscape buffer will be provided along the development boundary as shown on the master plan. The Type C landscape buffer shall include a minimum 6-foot high opaque screening at the time of installation consisting of a wall, fence, berm, evergreen hedge, or combination thereof. Number 26, a minimum of 30 overflow parking spaces shall be provided spaced throughout the development. Overflow parking spaces shall meet the standard dimensions for parking spaces in the UDC. Number 27, no private residential lots shall be located on areas that would otherwise be designated as Resource Conservation Area, also known as RCA. These areas shall be owned and maintained by the Homeowners Association. Number 28, the development shall provide a traffic calming device at the connection to the existing stub at Lynn Drive, subject to the approval by the Town Engineering and Public Works Departments. Number 29, lot grades shall not exceed slopes of 3:1 on residential lots. Retaining walls shall be allowed to make up the grade on steep areas of the site. Retaining wall easement shall be provided if a wall or part of the wall structure is located within lots other than HOA maintained. Number 30, this development shall provide resurfacing of Country Lane from the south end of the site frontage on Country Lane to Barber Mill Road, outside of the limits already covered by the TIA recommended intersection improvements. Resurfacing shall consist of a minimum of 1.5-inch layer of overlay asphalt over the existing street section, at least 20 feet wide, subject to approval by Ncdot as part of a 2-party encroachment agreement. Number 31, the development shall enter an operation and maintenance agreement for the proposed stormwater control measures as outlined by the Town of Clayton UDC section 158.061. And number 32, to the extent of any conflict between the master plan narrative, and these conditions shall control. All right. So now if council chooses to approve the conditional rezoning, you must approve it with the statement of consistency and reasonableness. I just read you 32 zoning conditions, so I'll let you read that out of your agenda packet. And that is the end of the town staff presentation.
Excellent. All right. Any questions or comments for staff? Yes.
Excuse me. Based on our current UDO, do stormwater ponds count as part of the open space and also retaining wall structures?
Can you repeat your question? I had a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. Based on our current UDO, do stormwater ponds count as part of the open space requirement and also do the retaining wall structures?
I do not know the answer to that question.
I'm filling in for a planner.
I do believe retaining walls can, but I'll have to follow up on the stormwater control measure.
Okay.
We'll get you an answer before the end of the discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm thinking now, if it's the wishes of the council, we'll just open up for your questions, and whoever can answer those questions from whichever party, please step forward and assist. All right. So, Mr. Casey.
Yeah, I have a couple comments and a few questions. First off, I want to thank the applicant and the neighboring community for their passion on this project. This is what makes these decisions tough and impossible to please everyone. This is a difficult piece of land, and there are a lot of elements that factors that must be taken into place. For the neighboring community, please understand that the applicant has made several concessions that will benefit the community. Does this mean we're there yet? I'm not sure. I still have some concerns and questions. I would like to work towards a path of yes, but also appease the neighborhood and those concerned citizens as well. I would like to highlight some of the concessions that the applicant has made: repaving Country Lane, reducing the number of housing units, and bringing in a higher-end home design with increased variety and larger house design. I have received a lot of input and some polarized opinions on the trees and the potential significance of a Native American site there. I appreciate all the information from the community and their concerns regarding this potential Native American lands. Once again, I do appreciate their diligence and their educating us on that. Also appreciate the preliminary study done by the applicant. Overall, the town does not have any purview on Native American burial grounds. That is handled at the state and federal level, specifically at the state level under the North Carolina General Statute, Chapter 70. And based on that statute, anything found would be required state notification. I reached out to Mr. Cawley, and is that correct? Can you elaborate on that some more, sir?
That is accurate. That's my understanding of the law, that those are not matters for the town to regulate. Those are regulated at the state level, and any findings would be would require coordination with the Department of Cultural Arts.
Thank you. But with that being said, I'm a very fact-based person, and there were some concerns brought up regarding some of the trees on site. And I know Withers Ravenel did a report and a study on some of the trees as well. One thing I wanted to bring up is, I guess the way you can calculate a tree and the tree's age is the diameter breast height. And the report by Withers Ravenel had it at 51 inches and also noted as a white oak tree. And then I was able to, there's a report by Purdue University site that has a way to calculate the age of a tree with that DBH height. So if you take that 51 number by the report by Withers Ravenel and multiply it by an age factor for this white oak, and Purdue University had 5, that would get 255 years old, approximate for that tree. So that would date this tree back to the 1970s. And I know there were some concerns from the community regarding those trees on site, and I just wanted to take note of that using what the applicant provided plus some information from a credible university. I know that a core sample was typically the preferred way to calculate the age of a tree, but because of a dead spot in the tree, that was an inconclusive calculation. So based on the understanding that the tree, I've been told that the tree was planning to be saved. Based on that understanding, I'd like to make that a condition and also have a licensed arborist to just advise on potentially an adequate buffer for that tree off of Lynn Road. I could see shifting the parking lot over a little bit to the existing Lynn Road community to provide, some more buffer room. And also maybe one day people could go park in that parking lot and visit that area. And I'd like to also check it out in person myself. I think this is a fair request based on the concerns of the neighborhood and the community, and a project of this size, scope, and massive size of this development. I think that would be a reasonable and not too burdensome of a concession. So I don't know if we need to have the applicant come up and be willing to make that concession or not, but that was some of my initial thoughts.
Would you like to hear from the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. She's coming.
Thank you.
Good evening, council and mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to address that condition, Mr. Casey. I've been jotting down some notes here, so we'd like to offer the condition that the development shall install tree protection fencing around each of the 2 trees identified as bent trees, and as shown in the tree report prepared by registered forester Travis Howell, to protect the critical root zone. And then we had some other language, but you said you wanted a registered arborist. I'd just like to get some clarification on that.
I'm not an expert on buffers for trees, so I mean, I would prefer that come from an arborist or someone that's, specializes in that.
Okay, so we can put critical root zone as determined by a registered arborist, or what we had was at 1 foot per 1 inch caliper, and clearing and grading disturbance shall not impact the area enclosed by the tree protection fencing.
I guess if that makes sense, and that's the rule of thumb typically in these situations, I'm not sure. Like I said, if it's vetted by an arborist or someone who is a specialty in that, I think that would be sufficient. Ultimately, the point is just to make sure that there's adequate space so it will be protected and not harmed through anything.
Okay, thank you. I'll submit this to you after we get it.
That's all my comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ms. Archer?
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to echo a lot of what Mr. Casey said about just appreciating the hard work that the nearby residents have done and the passion you've put into researching this parcel and educating me and other members of the council. I've learned a lot about this property and our history in that area, and I really appreciate and respect all of that. I also, again, to echo Mr. Casey, want to thank the applicant for the concessions they've made thus far, reducing the number of units and increasing that minimum lot size, improving the aesthetic appeals, that was in conditions 19, 20, and 21, the traffic calming on condition 28, and then the resurfacing of Country Lane at condition 30. I feel like those are all really important steps that you made, and I really appreciate that. There were other conditions that you added as well that I appreciate, but I just have some further questions about, and I'm hoping maybe for the folks, those of you who are here this evening can help educate me a little bit more. So pertaining to condition number 9, enhanced erosion control measures shall be provided along the limits of disturbance immediately along Little Creek and its tributaries. Is the phrase enhanced erosion control measures a defined term? And yes or no, is that a defined, like a best practice? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members, and particularly Ms. Archer. So enhanced erosion controls are considered anything that goes above and beyond what would normally be required for normal conditions. And those are typically not very, looking for the right word, not very complicated. And I would just name a few. So what we consider a typical erosion control measure would be silt fence around the perimeter of the land disturbing activities with silt fence outlet structures at each of the low points along the perimeter. Skimmer basins where you have more concentrated flow. Sediment basins where it would be permanent stormwater control measures. Typically, they're utilized as temporary erosion control facilities. Those typically include baffles, which basically provide as filters for the water between the inflow point and the outlet point of the facility. And then upstream, you have conveyance measures like diversion ditches, temporary swales, pipe slope drains to convey runoff down steep slopes into those skimmer basins and SCM facilities. What we consider enhance would be, and I'll give you a few examples. The goal is to work through them with the town engineering staff during the review process along the areas of more concern, which have been identified as the eastern property boundary where the creek is located and backs up to the neighbors from Horseman Ridge subdivision. So we could propose a combination of the following: double row of silt fence. We could also implement super silt fence, which is more beefed up to not be knocked over by sediment accumulating behind them. We could implement sediment traps at those low spots along the perimeter, which is supposed to hold volume, not just let the water through a rock check dam, for example. They actually hold water, but are for smaller drainage areas, typically between the conveyance systems that convey water to the actual basins and the perimeter controls. Also, could be additional baffles within the sediment basins. Those tend to not work properly 100% of the time, whether it's shorter, basically shortcutting the inflow to the outflow location, but it could also mean higher baffles where they could serve as filtering devices during higher frequency storms. And then additionally, more on the stabilization side of things, because best erosion control is having ground cover. So proposing erosion matting, stabilization of newly graded slope areas in a time frame that's faster than required by the state. The state requires areas steeper than 3 to 1 to be stabilized within 7 days. We could look at doing stabilization in those within 3 days or something along those lines. Like I said, those are things that we anticipate, working closely with the staff from engineering department during the review process. Permanent stabilization, as soon as those areas are graded, is the one that's going to give the best bang for the buck. So.
Thank you for coming prepared with all those. I don't have any background in any of that. I'm sure those are all accepted practices, and so that's great. And I have full faith that our engineering staff would review those and decide which are appropriate. I guess for the purpose of the condition, I'm just trying to be thorough here, and I just want to make sure that when we're referencing a phrase like that, enhanced erosion control measures, that staff kind of knows what we want, which is obviously above and beyond. Like you said, all of these would be above and beyond. I don't know if there is a way, or if you're even agreeable to wording the condition slightly differently to maybe even including these examples or some of the language that you just stated with the various options, not stating that we would have to use every one, but that those were the types of measures that we would be looking for. I just want to have a little more certainty about what exactly we're agreeing to there, if that makes sense.
Understood. Pretty much like the condition on the architectural elements where we list a few of the options. So that sounds fair.
Thank you so much. That's condition 9, and I appreciate that. Was that enough for staff to kind of help craft something, or can we just insert those examples and say something like this list of enhancements would be selected from?
Can I offer a suggestion? I mean, one possibility, if the applicant is agreeable to just insert enhanced erosion control measures as reasonably determined by town staff.
Does that work for you?
That sounds fair.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Probably I have a few more. I think I have 5 total. So condition number 31, the development shall enter into an operation and maintenance agreement for the proposed stormwater control measures as outlined by the Town of Clayton UDC section 158.061. I just want to clarify if this is sort of normal operating procedure or, okay, so this is sort of normal operating procedure. This isn't something necessarily above and beyond in terms of stormwater control.
Joshua, I'll save you a sense. Yes, so for our stormwater program, that is one of the elements. Any new development has to record a deed, in the deed, register of deeds, an operation and maintenance agreement. Town staff then annually confirm that it is being operated and maintained to those standards. There's a process involved, but that is a normal commitment from an applicant like this.
Thank you for clarifying that. Condition 29, lot grades shall not exceed slopes of 3:1 on residential lots. Retaining walls shall be allowed to make up grade on steep areas of the site. And then there's a little more language in that condition. What I'm curious about is for that phrase, steep areas of the site. Does that mean an area on the parcel that is steep but wouldn't necessarily constitute what our UDC defines as a steep slope area?
That is correct.
So I'm a layman here. I'm just trying to clarify what that's saying in layman's terms. So if there's a portion of a lot that's exceptionally steep, this condition is doing what?
So the goal is to pretty much address some of the concerns that were brought up to the team earlier related to erosion control after development is completed, and then going behind construction and adding measures like riprap dissipators down the slopes after the fact. So controlling the slopes to a maximum of 3:1 would prevent us from having to address those issues later on. It's more manageable. And then if it's for some reason challenging to meet those grades, we could implement retaining walls, which is pretty typical on this type of construction. And then we have a provision for easements that will basically allow the HOA to maintain those. They're not to be maintained by homeowners. They're going to be maintained by HOA and make sure that everything is working properly.
Okay, thank you so much. I was just going to clarify that. And then last one for now. Condition number 27, no private residential lots shall be located in areas that would otherwise be designated as resource conservation area. So first of all, thank you again to the applicant for this. This was a concern that I brought up at the last meeting. I do appreciate not having the residential lots in the RCA areas. But I just wanted to make sure, are these RCA areas as currently defined in our current ordinance? Because I know at the last meeting, it was the question of permit choice under the old ordinance.
That would be correct, because under the permit choice, no steep slopes would actually apply to the development. But we're voluntarily proposing that no residential lots are located within those areas that otherwise would be identified as steep slopes, with the idea being not having to rely on a person that is maintaining their lawn and any failures, or which we don't anticipate. But it's always better to have the HOA under control of those items as opposed to a homeowner that may neglect them. That's really the goal of that condition.
Thank you. I appreciate the logic there on that. Well, and then here we have run into maybe my bigger issue here with the revised condition. So it looks like the stormwater retention is still proposed in the RCA areas. And at the last meeting, I had requested to see an overlay of the steep slopes on the property, as defined under the current ordinance, with the site plan, which you've provided in the site plan, and I really appreciate that. So to my mind, those stormwater ponds being in those steep slope areas are, to me, just as incompatible as residential lots. But I do want to ask you, there may be some question of steep slopes that are not connected because our new ordinance does say connected to an existing RCA. So there's a chance that I'm misinterpreting then which slopes are connected versus not. And so I don't know if you can speak to that or not. And then the other related question that I would just like you to speak to, if possible, is what's the thinking behind having the retention pond still in the steep slope area? And do you think that that's good for the creek?
So, as a matter of fact, I do. And the reason is the alternative would be placing them above the steep slopes, right? Which means you're accumulating water above it and then discharging it to the steep slope area. Therefore, you're at the mercy of storms and who knows what else. Any vegetation in between that could be affected by storms. Could also affect the integrity of the stormwater pond itself. So placing them adjacent to the buffers as close as possible is really the more efficient way to address stormwater because you're discharging it closer to where it ultimately belongs, which is in the creek. And then you're avoiding having to intentionally divert runoff through those areas of concern, whether by surface or pipe, because pipes are, subject to failure as well. If you were to place the facility up on the hill and then pipe it to the buffers, it's still not safer than actually placing the facility as low as possible.
Thank you for that answer. Do you happen to know off the top of your head if any of the steep slopes in the stormwater retention areas are the kind of orphan or standalone steep slopes by any chance? Or are they all?
I believe one of the ponds, the one to the northeast of the property, may be overlapping with one of those adjacent steep slope areas. But again, that's what I was saying earlier. Even if they were or were not, it's safer to really place them at the lower areas. And that's why we have all these additional conditions that we're proposing for management of erosion control during construction. So it works together. It's not one condition by itself. It all is meant to be, a project with multiple aspects of it that ultimately get together into the final product.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Casey.
I have a question. What's going on? On one of the 3D renderings of the retaining wall where the slope area is, so you guys are, and Andrea is way smarter on this than me, but I guess that was basically a hill there. And so instead of, you're getting rid of the hill and making that a pretty substantially large retaining wall. Is that correct, basically?
There's a section of the site that will propose I would definitely say a substantial size retaining wall, yes. By substantial, I mean more than the typical 5 to 6 footer.
Right, and is that still being classified as a RCA area, or is it not a RCA area anymore because it's basically a big retaining wall?
I don't know how the town defines those areas and when those studies are performed, but I would expect it not to be because it's a developed portion of the site. But I've seen those maps and they do show steep slope areas within the highway ramps, which are also man-made. So it's I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple more questions just because now I'm looking at it and my brain's kind of thinking through it. I see a conceptual 3D rendering of it, but is there any idea of the potential height of this wall or the expanse of it?
There are portions of it that are anticipated to be close to 20 feet.
Okay, wow. So with that being said, are there any safety features that are going to be placed around it? Because it's going to be, pretty close proximity to these houses?
Well, absolutely. For example, these walls are going to be behind the stormwater facility, so we are taking all of those items in consideration when it comes to potential items that could cause them to fail. The number one is really water. So we are conveying runoff by way of pipes between the lots and around them to the stormwater facilities, as opposed to letting them run over the retaining walls. So that's a number one. And then also providing easements on the lots that will cover the entire structure and backfill material, including geogrid lengths, for the HOA to be able to maintain them where they overlap with some of the proposed residential lots.
Okay, thank you. And what is the lifespan of a retaining wall like that? Do you have any kind of approximate?
I mean, the design is intended to be, 50 to 100 years plus. It's all about the construction, really, because, recently we've seen some fail within, 5 years. I think there's a shopping center in Holly Springs that was fairly new, and it failed because of all the utilities, wet utilities, running too close to it. We don't have that situation here.
And so you said that the homeowners association would be responsible for that?
100%. None of the walls are to be privately maintained by homeowners. They're the responsibility of the HOA.
Okay. I could just see this being a pretty massive, expensive, 50 years, 20 years down the line. So I don't know, do typically homeowners associations have that type of money, or do they set aside that type of money? Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm going to speak for my subdivision, and their HOA, how it operates there. There's funds, and they actually hire third-party firms to perform feasibility studies on the facilities. And looking ahead, they increase budgets accordingly to be able to plan for further studies or repairs that they can foresee. So, yeah, homeowners don't necessarily enjoy that, but that's how it works. It's always being analyzed from a financial aspect.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question for now. With respect to these stormwater ponds, I see obviously the retaining wall, the stormwater ponds are going to be down at the bottom of the retaining wall, but is there still going to be a slope there? I mean, I guess, or is it just going to be completely leveled to the stream? I mean, just what type of other measures are being taken to make sure that the stormwater ponds down at the bottom, are maintained and they don't bust or something like that? I'm not an expert at this either, of course, so just wanted to.
Yeah, so those stormwater ponds, basically, the way we design them, we start with locating where the outfall location would be. And of course, they have to be able to be drained in the future, so they sit slightly higher than the bottom of the top of banks, I should say. And then you provide your volume above that for your permanent pool, typically about 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet, and then enough storage for the bigger storms. So at the end of the day, you have a man-made dam that could be anywhere from 8 to 10 feet in some cases, and that's going to sit above the creek. And those areas are part of the stormwater control measure easements that, again, will be maintained by the HOA and be part of the whole operation and maintenance agreement that will be recorded.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions for right now.
All right. Mr. Sims?
I don't know if this is a question for you, or I don't know if it's a question for staff, but the last time we were up, I mentioned something to Ben in concerns to, after I referenced a particular project that happened before, but there was issues with stormwater runoff. And we were talking about having some type of guarantee, and I don't know if Rich, you might even speak to this, as far as the applicant would have X amount of time to be responsible for things that might happen afterwards. And Ben said he definitely look into it. I know he had talked about it. I don't know as far as him and the applicant went into it, and as far as he had some ideas. I don't know if anything, unless I missed it in here, everything would ever come up with that or something was reached with that.
I'm going to look at staff to see if they're aware of anything specifically. I will say, just from our normal course of business, the engineer of record is responsible for the ultimate design, construction, inspection, and ultimately certifying that the measures are put into place per design and should function correctly. Normal statutes, and I'm probably defer more to my attorney friend to my right in terms of if that does not come through, there are legal avenues for HOAs or otherwise to recoup for errors and omissions or other issues from as a professional engineer. Outside of that, I'm not sure of any other guarantees other than that operation and maintenance requirement also requires that as designed, it is then in perpetuity being maintained to make sure that there aren't significant failures or other issues with the overall operation long term. Outside of that, I'm not aware of anything else. I'm going to look at Joshua for that.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm not aware, I've not had any of those conversations. The other thing I will add to that too is just until it's to that certification point, we do require bonds, but again, we can't hold those bonds in terms of perpetuity. Once we receive a certification that it is designed and constructed and implementing and operating as that designed, we receive those certifications. We typically release that bond that it is constructed, but other than that, I'm not aware of any avenues, and again, we have to talk with the town attorney specifically, but not aware of anything right now, and I'm not involved in those conversations, so I apologize that I missed that. I was not here at that meeting, but we can certainly evaluate. I'm not aware of anything off the top of my head.
Mr. Sims, the condition, one of the conditions requires entering a stormwater control operation and maintenance agreement. And that agreement would contain the terms you're thinking about, I believe, in that it would require the structure to be maintained in a manner that it functions properly. And if that is not done, the town has a recourse to go in and do the work and recover the costs of doing that work.
Is there a time limit on that?
$120 days.
Is that good? All right. Any other questions?
I meant the 120 days is the time within which to respond to a demand for repairs, not, I didn't misunderstand your question. That's not the life of the structure.
It is the life of the structure?
It is not.
If I may, the typical in our standard O&M agreements that we require is for in perpetuity. So there is no timeline to which that expires. That is, that device is supposed to be maintained and as it was constructed and designed in perpetuity. And we do have, and we do require the inspection reports from a licensed professional to ensure that it is being maintained as it was constructed.
Ms. Arch.
One more thing, thank you. I have a lot of respect for engineering standards, and we all drive on roads and have to rely on them for our lives every day. But you may not know that one of the first actions that this new council took was to re-implement the steep slope ordinance that had previously been on the books and was off for a short period of time. And as I look at this plan and I see a lot of improvements, and I know the parcel has a lot of challenges to work around, but I just want you to know that I can't approve that much disturbance of steep slopes. I'm not saying that I would want it to scale all the way back to the current ordinance. I think there's some sort of happy medium, but I just wanted you to know in case there's something else you can offer or a way we could work out a condition or something. But I mean, I look at this road, it's cutting over 2 steep slopes. We have 1 stormwater retention pond that's almost in a complete steep slope area. Each stormwater retention pond, I believe, except for 1, would be partially constructed, at least in some of the designated steep slope area. I guess that's what I wanted you to know. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not in a position of making another condition, offering another condition without consulting with the team. We hear you, and I would say that those locations where steep slopes were identified have been mentioned by some of the neighbors as being concerns today. So probably leaving them untouched may actually work against what some of those concerns are versus addressing them and putting something more permanent that is also going to be part of the maintenance agreement and will be inspected on a yearly basis, and we'll have somebody responsible for making sure it's not a liability. So.
If I could follow up with that, then I'm sorry. And that's a really good point. So you're saying that, in fact, some of these that are in steep slope areas would address what concerns?
Existing concerns with steep slopes, eroding into the creek and providing silt and sediment to the natural environment out there in the Little Creek and the tributary areas. So that's, like I said, it's more permanent solution to address them with stormwater facilities that ultimately could actually be part of the whole ecosystem.
If I could.
Because they're going to have permanent pools that are going to be in the range of 4 to 5 feet. You know, fish will be there. The birds will definitely be around and will provide, potentially even become an amenity.
So in other words, so these stormwater retention ponds that I'm referencing, the ones that are in steep slope areas, you're saying those are some of the steep slopes that are contributing to erosion and polluting of the stream?
That's my understanding. But it could also be a number of factors. Steep slopes are definitely a concern with or without development. So that's just, 4-1 slopes are classified as steep slopes here. Most residential lots are graded steeper than that. And when properly maintained, they're not posing any liabilities, for the most part.
I would be curious to hear how the other council feel about, the response you've given on steep slope. I mean, I guess with that additional information, unfortunately, I don't have any way to kind of vet that up here right now tonight. In terms of the suggestion that maybe the placement of these would actually help with some of the erosion issues. I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate, if that's something that we can table while I can get more information, or you could provide maybe more substantial information. I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know how the rest of this body feels about that issue. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. Any more questions for me when I'm here?
Not yet. Thank you. Hold on. Mr. Thompson.
I concur with Councilwoman Archer. I think the developers have really been working hard to address the issues we bring to them. And, it seems that every time we bring an issue to them, they're coming to us with, solutions that they feel are adequate. Then we hear from the citizens who equally have concerns. And I feel like we're gaining ground, and we're working towards the goal of being able to have the developer complete their project and have the neighbors be treated fairly as well. And but I agree with Councilwoman Archer. I think we may do a disservice to make a hasty decision tonight without allowing the team to go back and digest this feedback and bring back any other concessions or improvements or anything on their part. I feel like we may be acting a little hastily, because if we make a hasty decision tonight, then regardless of how it falls, somebody is going to lose in this deal. And I think I see developers that come before us that are willing to listen and willing to work with us. You know, and that's not always the case, you know, but it seems this team has really worked hard. And as hard as they're working, I think we are reaching a goal. And part of this process has been this feedback back and forth. And we've heard from citizens, we've heard from developers. And I feel like we were doing a disservice to both sides tonight if we make a decision tonight. And perhaps with the feedback from my fellow council members tonight, this will allow the developer to digest the feedback we've given, digest the feedback that you've given, and then come back to us with any proposed solutions, and then we can make a better informed decision. I just don't know that tonight is the right time to do that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Mr. Casey.
I can see where you're coming from, and I can buy into that for sure. I do want to still thank the applicant again for the willingness to make the concessions with these trees and some of the potential historical significance of those. And if, the applicant's willing and we can kind of get to this final piece and figure it out, I mean, I would be willing to table it.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo just a little bit what Councilman Thompson said and Councilman Andrea. I do believe that the applicant has made significant strides towards trying to reach some of the things that we've talked about. With that being said, there are some, it sounds like there are some concerns. I wasn't necessarily, I was one way or another whether to make a decision, but I have no issues with what's being proposed. So the main thing that I was concerned about is still kind of the irony is what Councilman Andrea is talking about as far as with the stormwater runoff. But that's why I was asking more from a concern part that when everything is said and done, how much more the responsibility, because you're still going to have the citizens there, the residents who have been there, are they going to still be taking responsibility for those particular areas after everything is said and done? And when she was stating about the locations, that's primarily what I'm a little concerned about. So I don't have any issues one way or another.
I just want to be very clear about what your request is of the developer. What is it specifically, topic-wise, that you want information brought back for the next meeting? So it sounds like we've made very good headway this evening. A lot of appreciation for adjustments, improvements, all of that. But I just want to make sure that we're really clear if you're going to ask to postpone this, to table this until the next meeting, what your specific requests are for the developer. Ms. Archie.
Absolutely. And so when I came in this evening, I was, just as I stated a moment ago, looking at the new site plan. It just, especially those stormwater retention areas being in steep slope areas, did not make sense to me. From just a water runs downhill and erosion and everything that we've heard as we worked through that steep slope ordinance months ago. However, the applicant, as he stated, I mean, if we could be educated, I guess, on that the locations of those stormwater ponds are in fact going to help address the residents' concerns about erosion, if they're going to help manage the erosion problems, then I guess that's what I would want to know. And so, like I said, I don't see any data here tonight that really helps put my mind at ease about that. But I guess my specific request would be that if stormwater retention ponds are going to be located in steep slope areas, what kind of data can we have presented to us that it's actually in the best interest of preserving the water quality in the creek?
Fair enough. Anyone else? All right. Is that clear or clear as mud? It's clear. Thank you. All right. Well, if that is, the request of the council, I will entertain a motion to table this to the next meeting. Unless you have additional comments?
I just wanted to add one thing to the whole concept. Sadly, I don't have the correct reference at this point, but every single project that we do, and believe me, we do a lot of them on a daily basis. The Army Corps of Engineers and the NCDEQ Water Resources Department, they expect the development to provide to propose impacts to the buffer areas to extend the stormwater outfalls directly to the top bank, because the concern of erosion of those buffer areas, which generally speaking are steep, wooded, and not maintained. So it's one of those cases that if it wasn't beneficial to the quality of the systems, being creeks, wetlands, it wouldn't be a requirement of the Army Corps of Engineers, who actually is the ultimate end-all, be-all when it comes to approval from a water quality review standpoint with the 404 and 401 permits. That's really all I wanted to say. I think one of you council members actually works for NCDEQ and can probably get some additional information on that, but we're more than happy to circle back with our environmental team and provide additional documentation if that's really what it's going to take. But I think we have addressed all of the concerns. We haven't heard anything new today. So tabling it for a future meeting is probably going to be the same as today. That's how we feel at this point.
Thank you so much for that response. I'm sorry, could you clarify that? Just, so the 401 and 404 permits, which would come later in the process, of course.
That's correct. We normally don't go through that until we have a zoning approval, which triggers, development funds for moving it forward.
Okay, so, and then just, because I couldn't catch that, a sentence, what was the sentence about? Was it outflow or outfall?
Typically, when we have stormwater discharge from development, we are required by the Army Corps of Engineers and particularly the NCDEQ, DWR, to extend them to the top of bank, whether it's by extending the pipes through the buffer and discharging closer to the stream, or proposing a channel, a graded engineered channel from the pipe outfall to the top of bank. And I don't know if that's something that the engineering staff can speak to since they review applications, but that's, it's going to be a requirement of the 404, 401 permitting applications. We can show no impact and placing the stormwater above the hill right now. I can guarantee you when we go back through those approval processes, we're going to have to come back and say, okay, this is what's going to need to happen so we can get approval from the Army Corps of Engineers. And better to address it now than having to come back here and, go back to square one.
I really appreciate that information, and that's helping me a lot, because these are obviously decisions that I haven't had to make or weigh in on ever at this point in time. So I just want to clarify. So say we took the left the stormwater retention ponds where they're at right now, and then during your review process with DEQ, they're going to say that location is actually the right location and is the most protective of the stream.
If we show them what it is now versus something that shows the ponds up on the hill outside of those steep slopes areas, they're definitely going to choose where they are located in the plan right now.
Well, and then so not to, I know you guys have been through
And to be honest with you, sorry to interrupt you,
No, go
I don't think I would even put my PE stamp on a plan that shows this ponds above steep slopes either.
That is good information. And so I guess for me, and I know you guys have been through a headache with this project and lots of hurdles and all of that, but ultimately, I feel like I'm also answerable to a lot of residents, especially a lot of residents who came through when we were putting the steep slope ordinance back into place. I mean, we've seen pictures of all kinds of flooding and erosion. It's just a really sensitive issue at this point in time in this town with the way that it's grown and flooding concerns. So really, even if we tabled it for 2 weeks and it allowed me to gather enough information to sit up here and say to people, hey, here's the additional information, why they're putting this pond in a steep slope area, I just feel like for the people of our town, that would go a long way to show that we took the time to really think about this and put it to the test for their benefit.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions from council? All right. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to table 2021-20-CZM Country Lane Conditional Zoning District until the next town council meeting.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue to the next town council meeting. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, and motion carries. All right. Up next under new business is a resolution to award construction contract for the City Road Improvement Utilities Project.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here to present two projects for your approval. First of which, City Road improvements, which are utility improvements. This project will abandon a pump station that is getting old and it's going to need work in order to keep it working. In doing that, we would be installing about 1,200 linear feet of gravity sewer to Parkview subdivision, which would eventually take it to Sam's Branch outfall. We are also installing a new 10-inch water line up the road, replacing an old 1-inch line that is there and obviously not very useful being a 1-inch line. There were 3 bids for this project. The apparent low one we looked at and turned out to be a non-responsive bid. He had several math errors and did not have the correct licensing to do the project. So it went to the next bidder, TA Loving, which was a bid of $1,550.50. And Moffett also bid on this. Their bid was $1.35 million. That was the highest bid we got. So just to give you a little range there. Engineer's estimate came in at about $770,000, but prices are fluctuating so fast now that it's hard for them to keep up with. So we are seeking approval for that, for the town manager to sign off on. Any questions on that one?
All right, any questions for staff? Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the resolution to award construction contract for the City Road Improvement Project.
A second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the resolution to award construction contract for City Road Improvement Utilities Project. Is there any other questions? Any other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. And then up next is a resolution to award construction contract for the potable ground storage tank at Fire Station 2 project.
Yep. So this is actually not for the tank itself, which if you drive by, you see it's already built. This is for the pumps, the pipes and valving and stuff that goes with it, electrical. This tank is to keep the capacity at a range where we can keep bringing in, you know, future growth and stuff. So it's kind of an important project. We did receive 5 bids, ranging from the low bid of $707,051 to $887,440. Eberhart Construction was the low bidder. Engineers estimate, they just said they knew it was going to cost over $500,000, so, because the price on the pumps keeps escalating. So this is the second one we are seeking for approval. Is there any questions on this one?
Questions for staff? Okay. Wishes of the council.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to award construction contract for the potable ground storage tank at Fire Station 2 project. Is there any other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Motion carries. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Up next on the agenda is the selection of a consultant firm for the town manager recruitment.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to move to table our selection of a consultant firm to the next meeting.
All right, have a motion to table. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table this till the next council meeting. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to staff reports, beginning with the town manager.
Mr. Mayor and Council, main update I want to give for you today is with regard to the water reclamation facility. I think Joshua gave a pretty comprehensive update in terms of where we're at total capacity-wise based on current holdings with wastewater capacity. As you know, the design builder that we've been engaged with had a responsibility to provide us an offer of guaranteed maximum price by April 28th. We have received that and reviewed it. We have given them notification that the initial offer that as provided was not acceptable, and we are currently under negotiations to figure out what our path is forward. With that, we'll have to have some additional discussions with regards to the overall schedule of the project as well as total scale. However, it is a negotiation, so I do want to keep a few things close to our chest at this point. We will certainly give you an update once we have a recommended path forward. Other than that, just want to say it's just been a little bit over a year that I've been interim manager here, and I just want to say thank you all for being patient with me and to all the staff that have helped for the last year. It's been a wild ride, but I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to continuing working with you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming back to work every day. All right, town attorney.
No report tonight.
Thanks, sir. Town clerk.
No report.
Other staff? All right, I'll now open the floor for informal discussion and public comment. Yes, sir.
I'm David Cawthorn, 3109 Horseshoe Lane, adjacent to the Country Lane project. The first, I just want to point out a few inconsistencies in what the developer has presented to you guys. The first one is some of the paperwork they submitted said the Catawba Nation doesn't know of anything historic out here. That's because this is not Catawba area, it's Tuscarora. The Tuscarora of Johnson County, I've just got a history lesson from our friends from Pembroke, that the Tuscarora ran the Catawba out of here. So it was just Tuscarora territory. And the developer knew that because we had Tuscarora people here last time speaking to them and speaking to you. So that to me is, I'm going to say it nicely and just say inconsistent, but I think it may be something more. We had, for the bent trees, the trail trees, the saddle trees, we had a professor from NC State, professor of forestry, who is just about to get his doctorate. He came out and wrote us a certified letter, which I think was given to you folks. He said it was a red oak tree. Their expert said it's a white oak. The leaves are entirely different. There's no way that tree's a white oak. his growth factor is the wrong number. The professor from NC State also said, do not bore this tree because you can kill it. What will happen is bugs and disease will get into that hole that they drilled and kill this tree that is potentially, not potentially, it was here before this country was the United States. And what they did to try to justify building some houses over there is, I'm not going to say it's going to kill it, but it's very likely to cause some disease and maybe make it die earlier than it should. Our friends from the Tuscarora Nation are here. They're out talking to the developer right now. I wish they were in here to address you instead, but I guess they'll be here for the next one. One of the things that Councilman Archer had pointed out and others is just the steep slope erosion control. Erosion is very, very important. That's something that will protect this blue line stream if we watch out for erosion, right? But I want to also look at the plans that they submitted before did not have as many retention ponds. There was no mention of a retaining wall 20 feet tall. That means they're not putting these ponds on the steep slope. They're destroying the steep slopes and putting ponds in a flat area below this retaining wall. That flat area will be in the floodplain of the creek. Trust me, I've seen it flood many times in my 25 years being there. And what will happen is the water from that creek, when a heavy rain comes, will take the water out of those retention ponds and put it right in the creek. So all the chemicals in the grass, all this oil and whatever is on the pavement, any kind of pesticides, that's going in that creek. That's what's going to happen. They're not protecting the creek. So those are my 3 big points right off, and I'm hoping I didn't go over my 3 minutes.
You're okay.
Those are some very important points that I would like to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Robert Chavis, Tuscarora Nation member, we met earlier. I would like to ask the Town Council, has anybody been there and walked the site yet of the Town Council? I respectfully ask, has anybody been to the site? And I would go on because my time is limited. This is probably about a 45-degree, roughly. Well, you go out there and walk it like I did, it's a whole lot steeper than this. And this is kind of steep. It is, I mean, when you get to the top and look down, it almost looks like you're in a straight up and down 60 degrees. I mean, it's very steep. Nature knows best. And what I mean by that is the slope goes down to a natural large stream that used to be actually deeper and bigger than what it is, I can tell by the lay of it. And there's 2 other smaller streams. So when you have stormwater, if you have as being an ex-naval commander, I was detailed for 45 days to Hurricane Katrina and Rita. I know about pump failure. I know about wall failure. I know about dam failure. I saw dead bodies all over the place of children and women and adult men and what have you. You don't want that here. When Matthew came, I'm from Robinson County. And Robinson County was devastated like many other places was devastated. When you're talking about a slope that I was almost out of breath, and I'm in pretty good shape for a 67-year-old. I was almost out of breath when I got to the top. You're talking about a very slope. When you're talking about 18, when I looked at the slides, I made some notes here. The slide said something about slope, wetlands. If you're really going to protect wetlands, you almost don't even need to do the project. But I'm not saying don't do the project. I'm saying it needs to be moved, I think it's west if I got my directions, not just further away from the Native American or trees and the site, but I'm looking at I'm part of, I go to trainings for disasters of North Carolina and everything else, even being a retired person. And this looks like a disaster in the making, I'm sorry. And I'm not against the developer, and I really appreciate the developer's time and considerations, as some of you guys have already commented on. But when you talk about storms, already that lay of the land has already accepted nature's way of handling storm drainage as it lays. Now, I wouldn't want my children, because I don't know if I'm going to move here or not, it's kind of a nice, I actually used to work part-time in urgent care, I'm a retired PA combat medic. I used to work at Clayton Urgent Care down the road here, I think it's that way, part-time when I'd be not deployed. So I know something about the area, and I've already walked this land, and you're talking about retaining walls? How many times, well, look what happened in Florida. 98 people dead because man, or humans, I'm not going to blame men, humans thought they knew better than nature and didn't do their due diligence, as this young lady here is speaking towards. I don't know if she used those exact words, but due diligence would be to go there, walk the land, and actually have, I like your idea, Miss, is that Archie? Mm-hmm. You need, again, I have a background in architectural and mechanical drafting way back. Well, when I looked at this land, I want to see, if I was on this town council, I'd want to see 3D renditions of how this is going to look and how the wall is going to look. I don't want to see slides that tell me 18 feet or this, how many gallons per day, you know. I don't want to see, and graphs, look, I'm a statistic man. I can take a graph and make you believe anything I tell you. Statistics is the art. These guys may disagree with me because they like statistics and they like graphs. I like graphs. I've used graphs many times to prove my point. I can make a graph, tell you exactly what I want you to tell you. The right way or the wrong way. I'm just telling you that this, beside the Native American value and the historical value to North Carolina and my nation of people, of Tuscarora people, what we call Scalrudi Katnawaga means people of the long shirt and the cypress in the woods, or the water rather. And there were cypress nights out there when I actually went out there in the low-lying areas. It's a wetland that's probably protected by the federal government. It's also probably native land that's protected by state and federal law. And again, I'm concerned with the residents that would be living there. If I remember, they said something about an 18 or a 20-foot retaining wall. Why do you need that if you have nature already retaining it? Nature's taking care of it already. Why would you? I just went out and talked with the developer. I said, I would think it would be more cost effective to build further away from the steepest part than to try to get to the steepest part and do retaining walls and pumps. I mean, again, I used to do commercial plumbing on the side with some friends of mine when I wasn't deployed and didn't have a job, master of many things, you know. And you're talking about pumping stations with 6-inch or 4-inch pipes coming out of them, and do they actually work, and do they actually take in consideration Hurricane Katrina's, Hurricane Rita's, Hurricane Matthews that we closer to home had, and other hurricanes we've had. I'm concerned for the people of Clayton, believe it or not, because I live in North Carolina, and I've had to go to disasters in North Carolina. I've got relatives, aunt and uncle, that live on the Outer Banks.
Sir, I'm getting ready to cut you off because you far exceeded your 3 minutes.
And real fast, and I'll go. The other thing we need, we were asked for time to have the OSA that already has approved and, agreed with us that it looks like a native site, and a Tuscarora site specifically. Give us time to have it investigated. I'm standing here saying it either is or it's not. Investigate it. If there's nothing there archaeologically important, fine. But if there's not, I want you to consider the slope and the natural disaster that might come from that. So I want you to think about those two things, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, Town Council, my name is Just Brown. I live at 3112 Horseshoe Lane. On this development, they talked about a retention pond. They did a retention pond in Little Creek outside of us. The wall collapsed on it, and they ended up putting pipe in the ground and running all the water into the creek. I'm not trying to put no blame on nobody, but I don't want to see the same thing happen with this one, because supposedly it's going to go behind my house. I really don't want to have all that runoff flood my property, and I really don't want to see it flood that creek. That creek's been there a long time before I even lived here. So I'm hoping that y'all will make a point of making sure if they're going to do a retention pond, that it's going to contain the water and not collapse, and then let them drop pipes in the ground and run the water into the creek. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Promise I won't go over my 3 minutes. Mayor and council, thank you so much for everything you guys do week in, every other week, et cetera, and in between. And I also want to thank the developers for the time they put into making tweaks. Chief for making a trip up here. Real quick, I just want to agree with you that yes, that a lot of effort has been put into tweaking the plan, although I think a lot of the effort has been workarounds versus solutions, and the two terms are different. I just wanted to highlight that because, and I was just talking to them out there in a very collaborative spirit, and we agreed to have an offline meeting to talk about some of the win-wins that we can get to, and they're totally on board, so that's great. But I wanted to emphasize that, and as I told them, the land that's at the bottom of the ridge is functionally my property, and I'd use the word functionally. It's not legally my property, but it's everything that happens above, I end up getting the impact of. And I think I've sent some of you the before and after of a flood, where my daughter's playground got washed away, and my expensive Harley, the engine got flooded. It's crazy, and I'm just saying, probability and possibility, when they come together, leads to an inevitability. And logically speaking, and since the solution is so simple and the stakes so high, it's imperative that we do exactly what you guys said, which is give it some more time. And in that time, we hope to be able to meet with them and come to a little understanding as to how simple the solution is. I visually described it to them out there. They were like, yeah, you know what, that could possibly work. I said, well, I've had a professional engineer certified, check it out. And I used to be an engineer at NC State, but I'm not a practicing or certified, put that on record, just as a graduate of NC State. And so I used my hydrology background and said, look, here's what's going to happen. And here's how we can offset it. And here's how you can make up for the area that might be lost. I think you said it costs less to do this, and it's simpler. It achieves so much, and that's what just baffles me, but I think we'll get there, and I don't want to go over my 3 minutes because I think I did last time, but I just want to thank you for the time you guys spend on this, because I know, you know, this is family time, and you're here, so thank you for that. There was one more thing, but I can't remember it. So, and these are the steepest slopes in Clayton. So if there is a steep slope concern or ordinance and then repealed and then back again, this is the place. I had a 3D rendering done by an engineer from aerial and, you know, not just lines on a map. I said, give me a 3D so that, because one question one of y'all had was, show us the slopes, or what do you know about the contours? And there was no answer. Well, now you have a visual 3D. These are the steepest slopes, and if there is a way to protect them, it should be considered. Thanks. Hope didn't go over my 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right. If not, I'll close the quickly.
I will take 3 minutes. Michael Plumley, 105 Stonehenge Drive. May I have the assistance of Jonathan Jacobs to bring up the 3D rendering of the packet for the 2021 CZM that was submitted? This is the 3D renderings. Do we have that?
It's attached to the agenda, if you can bring the agenda up.
I love that.
Jonathan, if you bring the actual agenda, the digital agenda up on the computer, you should be able to click on the link.
Of course.
I'll include this in my time since I don't have but one thing to talk about as well. Splendid. I look forward to the meeting in 2 weeks. I hope it doesn't get tabled anymore, because I feel that this picture shows that there's a public safety issue with this development, and 2 weeks from now, unless they revise this further, because they continue to revise it, I mean, it looks pretty clear to me, and they've articulated that there's a 20-foot drop off the back of these people's properties into retention ponds. I suppose they could put up really high walls, or fences, but again, in terms of the findings of fact number one, it looks like this would materially endanger the public health and safety. Good, I'm still being quick. So I think the quickest thing in the next meeting would actually be to vote no and have them resubmit a plan, go back through the process, because as you know, because this is tabled, we cannot rebut any of the things. There are no more public comments aside from the general one. But as many of you know that I sent to you, their additional info is I don't have any unkind words for it, but as someone else said, the person who checked out the tree didn't even know what kind of tree it was, and they materially misrepresented the age by at least 200 years. And also, they're not an expert. They're a remote sensing project manager. But again, I don't have any chance during the normal process if this were voted down, so we can go back to the process again. I'm sure that they'd love to go through the process again. After all, they value the property. I don't know how anyone can look at that, and especially if your family was at the back with kids, because we all know what kids do. They explore. Right now, as Chavis said, there's a beautiful slope and a great place that would make a good place for a park or, you know, like a natural walkway or a trail. It looks like there's going to be retention ponds that are going to be gravel abutted going up against the stream. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the vote 2 weeks from now not being tabled further, because eventually they're just going to keep changing it and changing it and changing it further away from what the public was able to comment on. I thank the council and the mayor for their time. I yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, no one else wishing to speak. I'll turn it over to council for comments. Mr. Sims?
Yes, I just want to make a comment, Mr. Mayor. On this Country Lane project, there was a lot of passion that has been put out, and I received lots of texts, and I recently received lots of emails. And anybody that knows me, I appreciate those, and I've met with a lot of people. And I do visit everything, just about every single property that comes across us. I've been in office here since December, and I take each and everything very seriously. It's just part of my makeup. I think that's one of the reasons why I got elected. With that being said, as people, as I'm learning this, as people start to do certain things and send certain emails, I think you have to be cognizant to what they're sending and what they're saying, because at the end of the day, we volunteered to be up here, and you know the time that we take in these things is we take it very seriously. So when individuals send certain things to me and saying that I don't need to make the cowardly decision and say no to the yes to the project, I do take that to heart, which all the council knows, and I'm very proud. I will always say it. After 21 years in the Marine Corps and 9 months spent in Iraq, all right, I have no problem whether my decision is no and whether my decision is yes. All right, we put the research and the time in, I can say, with this council. So at the end of the day, again, I do not, I like all the graphs and the things, but I love what Councilman Porter said in asking the town attorney, and I appreciate what you said, town attorney, as far as what people have to understand. As you asked of me, did I do my research and going out there? Absolutely. But how about let's us out there in the public do our research on what exactly is our responsibilities to what we can decide on, because a lot of things I have been sent and asked about is things that we have no jurisdiction over. And I think it's extremely important that we understand that. Why? Because sometimes we're chasing things that we should not be chasing. Where we should be putting the energies and chasing at or whatever is going to be left to the side, and then people will take the wrong approach on certain things. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my comment.
All right. Any other council?
I just want to say something real quick too. Appreciate your comments, Councilman Sims. I did a little bit more research on this Country Lane project, and just so the surrounding homeowners know, back in 2006 or 2007, something was approved at this site. It just never came to fruition. So, you know, what we're having to face and the decisions that we're having to make right now, we're trying to do it in the best interest of the community and also be aware of and cognizant of the potential for, you know, the developer's rights too and the landowner's rights. So, you know, there was a project that could essentially have had something just like this or maybe even to a much more, you know, higher degree, but we're trying to do our due diligence, and that's why we're tabling this, and that's why we're trying to make these decisions and ask these hard questions. And just please understand that we're doing that, and we're trying to do our best. Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Please clear the room. All right, I'll call our meeting back to order, and if there's no further business to come before this council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night.